today's video we're going to be doing a grid math problem. So here's our problem statement. So in the 4x5 grid shown, 6 of the 1x1 squares are not intersected by either diagonal. When the two diagonals of an 8x10 grid are drawn, how many of the 1x1 squares are not intersected by either diagonal? So here's our 4x5 grid, and the possible answers that we have for this question is A, 44, B, 24, C, 52, D, 48, and E, 56. So basically what the question is saying is that this is a 4x5 grid shown, and there is 6 of the 1x1 squares are not intersected by either diagonal. So if I quickly draw this out here, we can see that if I see the ones that are not intersected, we have one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, and one here. So we can see that there's 2, 4, 5, 6. So 6 are not intersected, and everything that touches the diagonal line touches is intersected. So what the question is asking, so if this would be an 8x10 grid, so how many of the 1x1 squares would not be intersected by either of the diagonal? We're just gonna first show the same thing again. So this is the 4x5 grid still. So if we remove one diagonal from the 4x5 grid, we can see that 8 squares are intersected by the diagonals and 12 squares are not intersected. So the result will be the same whichever of the two diagonals are removed. So what we just did is that we basically just removed the other diagonal and we just took it out. So now we just have one diagonal, and we can see that how many of the squares are intersected. We can see that there is 8, and then here the ones that are not intersected, we can see that there's 12. So we have 8 intersected and 12 not intersected, and the result will be the same for whichever of the two diagonals were to be removed. So now with this information, what can we do? So here's just the drawing of the 8x10 grid. So now this is 8x10, and now what we can do is that we can construct the 8x10 grid with two diagonals using 4 of the 4x5 grid. So what we just did is that we took the 4x5 grid and just made it 4 times to get an 8x10 grid. And then we just remove one diagonal, since we just need one diagonal line crossing in between the. So overall, this means that 4 times 12 is equal to 48 of the 1x1 squares are not intersected by either diagonals. So what we already did in the previous slide is that we found out that 8 of these would be intersected. So all of these 8 will not count. And we found out that there's going to be 12. So there's 3 here, 4, 5, 6, and then 3 here, 4, 5, 6. So these are going to be not intersected. So we know that there's going to be 12 that is not intersected in one of them. So all we have to do is just multiply it by 4, since we have 4 of the same grids, and all we're going to get is our answer as 48. So that means that 48 are not going to be intersected, which means our answer for this question is equal to D. So thank you so much for watching from Try to Be Useful, and we'll see you guys in our next math problem.